The ballroom of the Astor Grand was drowning in gold leaf and the hollow chime of crystal glasses. It was the kind of event that existed not for celebration, but for display. A Melita Re-Cha-Righty Gala, hosted by the family of General Marcus Slane. A passing of the torch, they called it. A recognition of service. For Elias Vance. It was the last place on EARTH he wanted to be. He stood at the periphery, a phantom in a tailored black suit that fit him like a second skin. His posture was ramrod straight, a ghost of a discipline that no amount of civilian tailoring could obscure. His hands, La RG and SCA red, rested at his sides, motionless. He held a glass of water he had not touched in 40 minutes. At the center of the room, his younger brother, Julian, was holding court. Julian Vance was the golden boy of the family, the one who had followed their father into the political arena, the one who had never seen a battlefield but spoke of war with the casual arrogance of a man who had read about it in briefings. He was flanked by Senator H.A. Risen and a cluster of Melita reattaches, all of them laughing too loudly at something Julian had said that Elias watched. He had been watching for 6 years. 6 years since the raid in the Zagros Mountains. 6 years since the extraction went sideways, and he had made the call to hold the line, so 12 of his men could get to the birds. 6 years since the medals were pinned on a flag-draped coffin that held a body that was not his. He had let them believe he was dead. It had been easier that way. Safer. The official story was that Major Elias Vance had died a hero. The unofficial story was that the man who had once commanded the Joint Special Operations Task Force had vanished into the shadows, trading STARS for anonymity. He had let his name fade, let his legend rot, let his family believe he was gone. It was a calculated erasure that now, standing in the glittering tomb of the Astor Grand, he wondered if he had made a mistake. Across the room, his mother, Aimee R.J. Rhett Vance, was speaking with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Her smile was fixed, brittle. She had never forgiven him for the disgrace, not the disgrace of his death, but the disgrace of what he had been before it. The shame of a son who chose the mud and blood of special operations over the polished corridors of power. She had made her peace with Julian. She had made her peace with the memory of Elias. The reality of him, standing in the shadows, was an inconvenience she could not afford. Brother. Julian's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. He had materialized at Elias's elbow, his smile wide and predatory. Up close, the sheen of arrogance was unmistakable. Julian had their father's eyes, cold, calculating, devoid of RMTH. I didn't think you'd show, Julian said, clapping Elias on the shoulder with a force that was meant to be casual, but was, in fact, a statement of dominance. I'm surprised you had the nerve. After everything, Elias did not flinch. He did not move. He merely turned his head, a slow, deliberate motion that pinned Julian with a gaze of flat, unblinking gray. I received the invitation, Elias said. His voice was low, gravelly, a sound that belonged more to a bunker than a ballroom. You made it clear our attendance was mandatory. Mandatory, Julian repeated, savoring the word. You're right. I did. I thought it would be instructive for you to see what you gave up, to see what I built. The family name isn't just a legacy, Elias. It's a weapon. And you were always too weak to wield it. The crowd around them had begun to thin, sensing the tension. A few heads turned. A few whispers sta root. Julian, ever the showman, fed on the attention. You think I don't know about the files? Julian said, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. The ones you've been keeping? The records of the Zagros mission? You think I don't know why you really sap Red? You think I don't know that you're not dead? Elias's jaw tightened. A single muscle flickered in his cheek. You're a liability, Julian continued, his smile never faltering. A ghost who should have stayed dead. But tonight, I'm going to make sure everyone sees you for what you really are. Not a hero, not a soldier, a coward who ran. He turned, raising his glass to the room. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may have your attention. The murmur died. I turned to the brothers. I'd like to introduce my brother, Julian announced, his voice ringing with false RMTH. The one you've all read about. The one who came back from the dead. Elias Vance, the man who was once decorated for valor. The man who never really measured up, did he? A ripple of uncomfortable laughter. Elias did not react. He stood like a statue, his face reved from stone. You see, Julian said, stepping to the center of the floor, Elias was given every chance. The best schools, the best assignments, the best opportunities to make something of himself. And what did he do? He threw it away. He went rogue. He got himself killed, or so he thought. And now he shows up here, uninvited, unannounced, expecting to be welcomed back into the fold. Marga Vance's face had gone pale. Senator H.A. Risen was watching with narrowed eyes. The Melita reattaches had gone still, their hands resting on their glasses, their expressions unreadable. Julian turned, facing Elias fully. The smile was gone. In its place was something cold and hungry. I know about the black site contracts, Julian said, his voice dropping to a whisper that ca ride just enough to be heard by the NEA rest cluster of listeners. I know about the money. I know about the deal you made with the enemy to buy your freedom. You think you're clever, Elias? You think you can hide behind your medals and your silence? I've been watching you. I've been waiting for this moment. Elias remained still. His left hand, hidden in his pocket, closed around a thin metal device. A memory stick. Encrypted. Untraceable. Julian was still speaking, his voice rising, painting a picture of conspiracy and betrayal. He accused Elias of selling out his men. He accused him of taking bribes. He accused him of faking his own death to escape prosecution. The crowd was no longer laughing. They were watching with rapt, horrified attention. Marga Vance's hand had gone to her throat. You're going to answer for this, Julian said, pointing at Elias. You're going to answer for all of it. Right here, right now. The silence was absolute. Elias let it stretch. He felt the weight of every gaze, the heat of the chandeliers, the cold of the marble beneath his feet. He had been silent for 6 years. He had been invisible for longer. He had waited for this moment. Slowly, he pulled his hand from his pocket. The memory stick gleamed under the lights. Julian, he said, his voice low and calm, you're right about one thing. I've been keeping files, but they're not about me. He held up the memory stick. A dozen cameras caught the glint. They're about you. For the first time, Julian's mask cracked. A flicker of doubt. A hesitation. Elias stepped forward, closing the gap between them. He was no longer the ghost at the periphery. He was the center of gravity, and the room bent tower. Him, you spent 6 years building a lie, Elias said. You spent 6 years profiting from my death. You've used my name, my legacy, my sacrifice, and turned it into a shield for your own corruption. He turned, addressing the room. His voice was granite. The Zagreus mission wasn't a failure because of me. It was a failure because Julian Vance sold the silver to a hostile buyer. Gasps. Murmurs. Marga Vance took a step back. Her face ashen. Julian's smile was gone. His face was a mask of white-hot fury. You're lying. Am I? Elias said. He tapped the memory stick against his palm. Every transaction, every encrypted call, every offshore account. It's all here. The chain of evidence is complete. And I have witnesses. He paused, letting the words sink in. Not that it matters, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that cut through the room like a blade. Because I don't need a trial, Julian. You don't need a hearing. I'm not here to expose you. I'm here to end you. He turned to the entrance. 2 men in black suits had read, their faces hard, their hands resting on their hips. They were not security. They were not police. They were his. Take him, Elias said. The 2 men moved. Julian tried to run. He made it 3 steps before they had him, a RMS pin behind his back, his face pressed against the marble floor. Elias walked over. He knelt down, his face inches from his brother's. You should have let me stay dead, he said. He straightened. He looked at the room, at his mother, at the senators, at the generals, at the glittering ghosts of his former life. He did not smile. He turned and walked out, the memory stick still in his hand, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the silence. That the limousine was a black coffin on wheels, and Elias Vance sat in the back with his hands folded over his knee, watching the city lights bleed through the tinted windows. The memory stick was no longer in his hand. It was in his breast pocket, a thin sliver of metal that felt heavier than any weapon he had ever seen ride. The driver was a man named Colm, former Delta, exfil specialist, loyal to Elias for reasons that went deeper than money. They drove in silence for 10 minutes before Colm spoke. "That the birds are on standby," Colm said, his voice a low rumble. "2 safe houses, one in the city, one in the mountains. The team is ready to move." "No," Elias said. "Not yet." Colm's eyes flicked to the REA review mirror. "Boss, with respect, you just publicly dismantled the golden child of the Vance dynasty in front of half the power brokers in the country. The family isn't going to let that stand. Julian's people are already mobilizing. I have reports of 3 vehicles leaving the estate within minutes of your exit." Elias said nothing. He was staring at the city, at the lights, at the skyscrapers that had once been his to command. He had walked away from all of it, the rank, the power, the name. He had walked away to sap AR, and now he had walked back into the fire. He had known this moment would come. He had prepared for it. But preparation was not the same as readiness. "Tell the team to hold position," Elias said. "I have one more stop to make." Colm hesitated. "Sir, if you're thinking of going to the house." "I'm not thinking," Elias interrupted. "I'm going." The Vance estate was a fortress of old money and colder RTS. It sat on a hill overlooking the city, a sprawling Georgian manor that had been in the family for 3 generations. Every stone was steeped in legacy. Every window held a ghost. Elias had not set foot on the property in 8 years. The gates opened without resistance. The security team recognized the limousine, recognized Colm, recognized the man in the back seat. They did not stop him. They were too afraid to ask questions. He walked through the front door without knocking. The foyer was vast, a cathedral of marble and arche wood. A portrait of his father hung over the fireplace. General Robert Vance, dead 5 years, his stern face frozen in oil and judgment. RJ Vance was waiting for him in the drawing room. She was seated on a velvet chaise, a glass of brandy in her hand, her back ramrod straight. She had changed out of her gala gown into a severe black dress that made her look like a widow at a funeral. She did not look at him when he entered. She read into the fire. "You've destroyed him," she said. Her voice was flat. "Hollow. He destroyed himself," Elias replied. "I just provided the evidence." She turned. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but there were no TRS. RJ Vance had never wept in front of anyone. She considered it a sign of weakness. "That you think you're righteous," she said. "You think you're some kind of avenging angel. But you're not. You're a ghost who should have stayed in the ground." Elias walked to the window. He looked out at the city below, the same city he had once sworn to protect. "You knew," he said, "about Julian, about the deal. You knew what he did." She did not deny it. "She did not need to die. I am his mother," she said. "It is my duty to protect my family." "And what about me?" Elias turned, his eyes cold. "Was I not your family?" She met his gaze. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Regret, perhaps, or guilt. It vanished as quickly as it had read. "You made your choice," she said. "You chose the battlefield over this house. You chose death over duty. You have no claim on my loyalty." Elias nodded slowly. He had expected this. He had known it. But he ring it spoken aloud, still right a weight he could not ignore, that he reached into his pocket and pulled out a second memory stick, identical to the one he had shown at the gala. "That I have copies," he said. "Thousands of them. They will be disseminated to every major news outlet, every investigative agency, every Melita tribunal within the next 72 hours, unless you do exactly what I say." RGA Rhett's face went pale. Her hand trembled, rattling the brandy in its glass. "What do you want?" she whispered. Elias stepped closer. He looked down at her, the woman who had given him life and then disowned him in the same breath. "I want you to call off the dogs," he said. "I want you to freeze the Vance accounts. I want you to order the security teams to stand down. And I want you to publicly denounce Julian for his crimes, on live television, within the hour." She read at him, her lips rooting in shock. You can't be serious. I am dead serious, Elias said. You have a choice, mother. You can save what's left of the family name, or you can burn with him. But you will not stand against me. Not now. Not ever. He turned, walking Tawa RD the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. You have 60 minutes, he said. Don't waste them. He left her sitting in the firelight, her glass trembling in her hand, her world crumbling around her. He did not look back that the safe house was a nondescript apartment in a working-class district, the kind of place that attracted no attention. It had reinforced doors, blackout curtains, and a panic room in the basement. Elias had bought it 3 years ago, under a false name, for the sole purpose of a moment like this. Cole was waiting for him at the door. The team was assembled in the living room. 6 men and women, all former special forces, all loyal to Elias without reservation. We have movement, Colmes said, handing Elias a tablet. Marga Rhett Vance made her broadcast 20 minutes ago. She condemned Julian's actions. She called for a full federal investigation. The stock market is already reacting. The family's holding company is taking a nosedive. Elias scanned the news reports. It was playing out exactly as he had anticipated. And Julian, he asked, that arrested, Colmes said. Federal marshals picked him up at the gala. He's being held at a black site facility pending transfer to a Melita re-tribunal. His lawyers already filing motions, but they don't have a leg to stand on. The evidence you provided is ironclad. Elias nodded. He set the tablet down and walked to the window, looking out at the grimy street below. The aftermath will be complicated, Colmes continued. The Vance name is effectively dead, but there will be blowback. Julian had allies in the Senate, in the Pentagon, in the intelligence community. They're not going to take this lying down. I know, Elias said. That's why I'm not done. He turned to face the team. They were watching him with a mixture of respect and wariness. They had followed him into impossible situations before. They knew better than most that Elias Vance did not stop until the fight was over. We have 72 hours before the full counterattack begins, Elias said. In that time, we're going to clean house. Every asset, every operative, every back-channel contact who enabled Julian's corruption. They all need to be neutralized. Neutralized how? One of the team members asked that. Elias's eyes were cold. Public exposure, he said. Full transparency. We're not assassins. We're not vigilantes. We're going to drag every single one of them into the light. No more shadows. No more secrets. Julian was just the beginning. The team exchanged glances. Then, one by one, they nodded. Elias turned back to the window. The city sprawled before him, a jungle of glass and steel, teeming with enemies he had not yet faced. He had waited 6 years for this reckoning. He would not rush it. He would not waste it. He would finish what he root. Dawn came gray and cold over the city, and Elias Vance was already moving. He had not slept. He had not eaten. He had spent the night reviewing files, cross-referencing names, building a labyrinth of connections that would bring down everyone who had ever profited from his brother's betrayal. The apartment was littered with tablets and monitors, each screen displaying a different thread of the conspiracy. Colmes stood at the door, a cup of black coffee in his hand. He looked as tired as Elias felt. First target is a man named Risen Thorn, Colmes said, former CIA station chief, now a private security contractor. He was Julian's prima liaison with the buyers in the Zagreus deal. He's been living in a penthouse downtown, protected by a small room of ex-military re-security. Elias took the coffee. He did not drink it. He held it, feeling the RMTH seep into his palm. He knows we're coming, Elias said. It was not a question that he knows something is coming, Colmes agreed. He's been moving assets for the past 12 hours. But he hasn't run. He's confident in his defenses. He thinks he can hold out. Elias set the coffee down. He walked to a table where a map of the city was spread out, marked with red pins and intersecting lines. His penthouse has a single main entrance, Elias said, tracing a line with his finger. 2 service elevators. A helipad on the roof. The building has a dedicated security desk, biometrics on every floor, and a private underground GA rage. He's not stupid, Colmes said. He knows how to protect himself. He's predictable, Elias countered. He's comfortable. He's been doing this for years without consequence. You've forgotten what it feels like to be hunted. Elias straightened. He looked at Colm. His eyes narrowed. We go in through the roof. The operation was executed with the precision of a surgical strike that Elias's team moved through the building's service infrastructure like ghosts. They've bypassed the biometrics, disabled the cameras, and neutralized the security desk without firing a single shot. By the time they reached the penthouse level, not a single RM had been raised as Elias led the breach himself. He kicked the door open with a force that shattered the lock, his weapon raised, his eyes scanning the interior. The penthouse was a monument to excess, floor-to-ceiling windows, white marble, modern ART that cost more than most people's homes. Risen Thorn was waiting for him in the living room. He was seated in a leather armchair, a glass of scotch in his hand, a sardonic smile on his face. He was surrounded by 4 Remedgua RDS, all of whom had their weapons trained on the door. Elias Vance, Thorn said, his voice dripping with amusement. The ghost of the Vance family. I wondered when you'd show up. Elias stepped into the room. He did not lower his weapon. He did not speak. I have to admit, I'm impressed, Thorn continued. You got past all my defenses. You must be very proud of yourself. But tell me, what do you hope to accomplish here? You've already ruined Julian. Your mother has disowned you. The entire intelligence community is watching your every move. And now you're here, in my home, threatening me with a gun. Elias was silent for a long moment. Then he holstered his weapon. I'm not here to kill you, Thorn, he said. I'm here to offer you a choice. Thorn's smile faltered. He had been expecting a different conversation. A choice, he repeated. Elias walked to the window, his back to the room. He read out at the city below. You're going down either way, Elias said. The evidence I have against you is complete. You will be tried, convicted, and imprisoned for the rest of your life. There is no escape. There is no negotiation. He turned, his eyes locking onto Thorn's. Unless you give me what I want. Thorn's hands tightened around his glass. The RDS shifted, uncertain. And what do you want? Thorn asked. The names of the buyers, Elias said. The full chain of command. Everyone who was involved in the Zagreus deal. I want their identities, their locations, and their vulnerabilities. I want everything you have. Thorn laughed. It was a harsh, brittle sound. You want me to sell out my partners to save myself? You think I'm that desperate? I think you're a pragmatist, Elias said. I think you know that the people you protected are the same people who will abandon you the moment it becomes inconvenient. They've already a route moving against you. They've frozen your accounts. They've cut your lines of communication. They're waiting for you to make a move so they can pin everything on you. Thorn's face went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. I'm not your enemy, Thorn, Elias said. I'm your only way out. You give me the names, and I'll make sure the public knows the full scope of the conspiracy. You'll be exposed, yes, but you'll also be protected. I'll make sure the buyers don't get to you. I'll make sure the court knows you operated fully. You'll go to prison, but you'll survive, and your family will survive. Thorn looked at his RDS. He looked at the glass in his hand. He looked at Elias, standing in the center of his beautiful, gilded prison, and he knew that the game was over. The name's in a safe behind the painting, he said, but I'll need to see the evidence. I'll need to know you can protect me. Elias nodded. He gestured to Colm, who moved to RD the painting. That you have 60 seconds to make your decision, Elias said. After that, the offer expires. Thorn did not hesitate. He gave his RDS a shot RP command to stand down. He gave Elias the combination to the safe. He gave him everything. And in exchange, Elias gave him the one thing he had been seeking for 6 years, the next name on the list. The buyers were not a single entity. They were a network, a consortium of powerful individuals from across the globe, all of whom had a vested interest in destabilizing the region. They had paid Julian for the coordinates. They had paid Thorn to facilitate the transfer. And they had paid others to ensure the mission failed. Elias had the names now. He had the locations. He had the vulnerabilities. He had the beginning of the end. Colm closed the safe and handed Elias a thick folder. Inside were documents, photographs, financial records, and a single encrypted drive. This is more than I expected, Colm said. Thorn was deeper in than we thought. Elias flipped through the pages. His eyes moved rapidly, absorbing every detail. He was the linchpin, Elias said. Without him, Julian couldn't have made the deal. But Thorn was just a middleman. The real architect's still out there. He paused at a photograph. It showed a man in his 60s, silver-haired, with cold eyes and a thin, cruel mouth. The man was standing on a yacht, surrounded by other powerful figures. Who is that? Colm asked. Elias's jaw tightened. His name is Silas Crane, he said. He's the one who made the deal with Julian. He's the one who ordered the attack. He's been operating in the shadows for decades, pulling strings, orchestrating disasters for profit. And he's been untouchable. Until now, Colm said. Elias closed the folder. He looked at Thorn, who was still seated in his room chair, his face a mask of exhaustion and fear. You've done well, Elias said. My people will take you to a secure location. You'll be protected until the trial. But if you try to run, if you try to RN Crane or anyone else, the deal is off. Understood. Thorn nodded weakly. Elias turned to leave. He paused at the door. One more thing, he said. Crane knows about me now. He knows about the investigation. He's going to try to hit back. I need to know where he's hiding. Thorn's face went pale. I don't know where he is. He never told me. He always communicated through intermediaries. Then give me the intermediaries, Elias said. Give me everyone who has ever spoken to him on your behalf. Thorn reached for a notepad on the side table. His hand trembled as he wrote down a list of names and contact methods. Elias took the notepad. He looked at the names, committing each one to memory. Thank you, he said. He did not mean it. He walked out of the penthouse, the folder tucked under his ARM, the names of his enemies burning in his mind. The elevator ride was silent. The street below was gray and empty. Colm fell in a step beside him. What's the next move? Colm asked. Elias did not answer immediately. He looked up at the sky, where the first light of dawn was beginning to break through the clouds. We find Crane, he said, and we end him. The safe house was quiet when they returned. The team was assembled in the living room, waiting for orders. Elias laid the folder on the table and began to distribute copies of the documents. We have a new target, he said. Silas Crane. He's the architect of the Zagreus disaster. He's the one who gave the order. He's the one who paid Julian and Thorn. And he's the one who's been untouchable for 40 years. One of the team members spoke up. How do we get to him? Elias pointed to the list Thorn had provided. Through his intermediaries, he said. We're going to follow the chain. We're going to find every person who has ever worked for Crane. We're going to squeeze them. And we're going to get to him before he disappears. He looked around the room, meeting each of their eyes. This is the final stage. Crane knows about us now. He's going to be moving. We have a narrow window to act. If we miss it, he'll vanish into the shadows forever. And everything we've done, everything we've sacrificed, will be for nothing. The room was silent. Then, one by one, the team members nodded. Elias picked up the encrypted drive. He held it in his palm, feeling its weight. Let's get to work, he said. The name on the drive led Elias to a man who called himself the broker. He had no known real identity, no traceable background, no physical address. He operated exclusively through encrypted channels and dead drops. He was the linchpin of the entire conspiracy. And he was in the city. Elias sat in the back of a nondescript sedan, watching a building on the other side of the street. It was an old Wari house in the industrial district, converted into a high-end data center. The broker's operation was buried somewhere inside, protected by layers of digital security that would take a conventional team months to penetrate. Elias did not have months. He's inside, Colm said, his voice low. We have confirmation from 3 independent sources. He's been in there for the past 6 hours, consolidating assets and preparing to exfil. He knows we're coming. Elias looked at the building. He had already run through every possible entry point, every possible scenario. The broker was a ghost, a shadow, a man who had built his life around remaining invisible. But even ghosts leave trails. There's an old service tunnel beneath the building, Elias said. It was sealed off during the renovation, but the structural plans show it's still intact. We can access it from a great 2 blocks east. Cole nodded. I'll lead the team. You stay here. No, Elias said. I'm going in. The tunnel was RK, damp and narrow. Elias moved through it with the instinct of a man who had spent more years in the shadows than in the light. The team followed in silence, their footsteps muffled by the dirt and debris on the floor. They emerged into the basement of the data center. The space was a labyrinth of cables and servers, humming with the low thrum of electricity. Elias led the team through the maze, his eyes scanning for any sign of movement. The broker's office was at the end of a long corridor, protected by a reinforced door and a keypad lock. Elias did not bother with the lock. He placed a shaped RG against the frame, stepped back, and detonated it. The door blew. IWA Road. Elias was through the breach before the smoke had Cleo red. The broker was seated at a desk, his hands raised, his face a mask of controlled panic. He was a thin man in an expensive suit, with RP features and eyes that root nervously around the room. He had a laptop open in front of him, its screen flickering with lines of code. Mr. Vance, the broker said, his voice reedy and strained. I was wondering when you'd arrive. Elias walked to the desk. He did not lower his weapon. He did not sit. You know why I'm here, he said. The broker nodded. I do. I've been expecting you for some time now. I just didn't think you'd be so direct. Direct, Elias repeated. You sold the lives of 12 of my men for a profit. You built an empire on the corpses of soldiers who trusted their government. You have no right to complain about directness. The broker's hand was shaking now. He was afraid, but there was also a glint of calculation in his eyes, a desperate hope that he could still negotiate his way out of this. Your men weren't the only ones involved, the broker said. You know that. You've already taken down Julian and Thorne. You've exposed the network. But there are others. People FA are more powerful than me. People who will stop at nothing to destroy you. Elias leaned forward, RD, his eyes now rowing to tell me who they are. The broker hesitated. Then he reached for his laptop. I have records, he said. Transactions, communications, everything. I can give you the full picture, but only if you let me walk away. Elias STA read at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. This is a data jammer, he said. It will erase every file on that laptop within 30 seconds. It will erase every trace of your operation, every backup, every encrypted drive, everything you've ever built. Poof, gone. The broker's face went pale. Unless you give me the names, Elias continued. You give me the names, and I'll let you keep your files. You'll still go to prison. You'll still be exposed, but you'll have something to be a gain with. You'll have a chance. The broker looked at the jammer. He looked at Elias's cold, unyielding eyes. He knew that he had no choice. The name's on a drive in my safe, he said. Behind the bookcase. I'll give you everything. Elias nodded. He gestured to Colm, who moved RD the bookcase. The broker's voice dropped to a whisper, but I should in you, Mr. Vance. The people you're after, they're not like Julian. They're not like Thorne. They're the kind of people who make governments tremble. If you go after them, you'll STARTOR. Elias looked at him, his face expressionless. That good, he said. I've been preparing for my entire life. Colm returned with the drive. He handed it to Elias, who plugged it into a portable reader. The screen flickered to life, displaying a list of names, accounts, and locations. Elias scanned the list. His eyes stopped on one name in EA, the top. That's Silas Crane, he said. He's listed as the Prima Beneficia Re. The broker nodded weakly. Crane is the one who controls everything. He's the one who gave the orders. I was just a facilitator. I handled the money. I handled the communications. But Crane was the architect. Elias looked at the broker. His face was cold. Where's Crane now? I don't know, the broker said. He moves constantly. He has safe houses all over the world. He never stays in one place for more than a few days. But I can give you his patterns. I can give you his protocols. If anyone can find him, it's you. Elias unplugged the drive and tucked it into his pocket. You're going to give me everything, he said. And then you're going to DSAP AR. You're going to go into protective custody. You're never going to use that name again. You're never going to contact anyone from your old life. Do you understand? The broker nodded frantically. Good, Elias said. He turned to Colm. Take him to the safe house. Keep him under guard until we're done. Colm grabbed the broker by the arm and hauled him to his feet. The broker stumbled as he was led out of the room. Elias stood alone in the office. He looked at the laptop, still flickering with lines of code. He reached down and pressed a button, shutting it off. The room fell silent. He walked to the window, looking out at the industrial district below. The sun was beginning to rise, casting long shadows across the streets. He had the names now. He had the locations. He had the vulnerabilities. He had the beginning of the end. The safe house was humming with activity when Elias returned. The team was analyzing the data from the broker's drive, cross-referencing it with the information from Thorne. Patterns were emerging. Connections were being made. Colm approached, a tablet in his hand. We have a hit on Crane, he said. His last known location was a private estate on the coast, about 200 miles north of here. He was spotted there 3 days ago. He's likely still there. Elias took the tablet. He studied the satellite images, the security reports, the layout of the estate. He's not going to stay there, Elias said. He knows we're coming. He'll be moving within the next 24 hours. Then we have to move now. Colm said. Elias nodded. He looked at his team. They were tired, but they were ready. They have been waiting for this moment. The are up, he said. We're going to end this tonight. The estate was a fortress. High walls, motion sensors, a private security force that rivaled a small arrogance. But Elias had been planning for this moment for 6 years. He knew the layout. He knew the patrol patterns. He knew every weakness. The team moved through the darkness like ghosts. They cut through the perimeter defenses with surgical precision. They neutralized the security team without firing a single shot. By the time they reached the main house, not a single alarm had been raised. Elias led the breach. He moved through the hallways with a predator's grace, his weapon raised, his eyes scanning every corner. The house was empty, save for the security team, who had been neutralized without a sound. Crane was in the study, seated behind a massive oak desk. He was an old man, with silver hair and pale blue eyes that held the coldness of a frozen lake. He was not Aramed. He was not afraid. Mr. Vance, Crane said, his voice calm and measured. I was wondering when you'd arrive. Elias stepped into the room. He kept his weapon trained on Crane, but he did not fire. You killed my men, Elias said. You sold them out for a profit. You've been hiding in the shadows for 6 years, thinking you were untouchable. But the shadows have a way of catching up with you. Crane smiled. It was a thin, humorless smile. You think you're here to bring me to justice, he said. You think you're the first man who has tried. I've been doing this for 40 years, Mr. Vance. I've survived assassination attempts, investigations, betrayals. I've survived things that would break a lesser man. And do you know why Elias did not answer? Because I'm always 2 steps ahead, Crane continued. I knew you were coming. I knew you'd bring your team. I knew you'd breach my security. And I've already made arrangements to ensure that none of you will ever leave this place. He pressed a button on his desk. The lights in the house flickered. A low hum filled the air. Elias did not flinch. You're right, he said. I came here expecting a fight. I came here expecting you to have a contingency plan. That's why I didn't come here alone. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It was a remote detonator. I have a team of snipers positioned on the hills surrounding this estate, he said. I have a second team waiting to breach the house from the ground. And I have a third team ready to cut off your exit routes. You're surrounded, Crane. There's no escape. Crane's smile faltered. For the first time, something like uncertainty flickered in his eyes. You're bluffing, he said. Elias pressed the detonator. A series of explosions rocked the estate, shaking the walls, shattering the windows. Crane lunged for the desk, but Elias was faster. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pinned the old man to the chair. That was a warning, Elias said. The next one won't be. Crane looked up at him, his eyes wide, his breath ragged. What do you want? He whispered. I want you to confess, Elias said. I want you to admit on record that you orchestrated the Zagros disaster. I want you to name every person involved. And I want you to give me the location of the remaining buyers. Crane STA read at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he began to laugh. You're not going to kill me, he said. You're too righteous for that. You're going to bring me to justice. You're going to let the system handle me. And that's your fatal flaw, Mr. Vance. Because the system is just as corrupt as I am. The system will protect me. The system will let me walk. Elias leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. You're right, he said. I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to do something far worse. He pulled a file from his jacket and threw it on the desk. I'm going to make you famous. The file contained everything. Every transaction. Every communication. Every name. Elias had been compiling it for 6 years, adding to it piece by piece, building a monument of evidence that would bring down the entire network. And he was going to share it with the world. The broadcast was scheduled for midnight. Elias had arranged for a live feed on every major news network, every social media platform, every outlet that could reach the public. He was going to expose Silas Crane, the Vance family, and everyone who had ever profited from the Zagros disaster. The studio was a nondescript Wari house, transformed into a makeshift television set. Elias stood in front of the camera, his face composed, his hands clasped behind his back. He had no notes. He had no script. He had only the truth. The feed went live. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice steady and cold. My name is Elias Vance. I'm a former major in the United States Army. 6 years ago, I was reported dead. The truth is far more complicated. He paused, letting the words sink in. Tonight, I'm going to tell you the truth about the Zagros disaster. I'm going to tell you who orchestrated it. I'm going to tell you who profited from it. And I'm going to show you the evidence that proves every word I say. The broadcast continued for the next hour. Elias laid out the conspiracy with meticulous detail. He named names. He presented documents. He showed the chain of evidence that connected Julian Vance to Silas Crane to the buyers. It was damning. It was irrefutable. And it was the end of everything. The response was immediate. Social media exploded. News networks scrambled to cover the story. Within minutes, the government was forced to issue a statement confirming that they were launching a full investigation. Elias ended the broadcast with a final statement. The men who died in the Zagros Mountains did not die in vain, he said. They died because a group of powerful people decided to profit from their sacrifice. But tonight that ends. Tonight, the truth is finally spoken. And the truth is always the most powerful weapon. He stepped away from the camera. The feed went to RK. Colm was waiting for him in the shadows, his face unreadable. That was a hell of a speech, Colm said. Elias did not respond. He walked to a table in the corner of the Wari house, where a laptop was displaying real-time news feeds. The headlines were already shifting. The Vance name was being dragged through the mud. Julian's face was everywhere, his mugshot plastered across every screen. Crane's photo was circulating, accompanied by speculation about his whereabouts. But Elias was not watching the news. He was watching the data streams, the encrypted channels, the backdoor communications that the public would never see. They're mobilizing, he said. Crane's people already moving. They're trying to contain the damage. They're trying to discredit the evidence. Colm stepped closer. Can they know? Elias said. The evidence is too strong. Too many copies. Too many sources. But they can still cause problems. They can still try to bury it. They can still try to silence the witnesses. He closed the laptop and turned to face Colm. We need to move faster, he said. Crane is going to try to flee. He's going to try to dissap AR. We need to find him before he does. Colm nodded. The team is already working on it. We have a lead. One of Crane's associates was spotted at a private airfield 3 hours ago. We're tracking him now. Elias grabbed his jacket. Let's go. The airfield was a small, private facility on the outskirts of the city. It was the kind of place where wealthy people went to dissap AR. No commercial flights. No security checks. Just a runway, a hangar R, and a lot of money. Elias and his team arrived in 2 black SUVs. They moved quickly, securing the perimeter, neutralizing the Guardias. By the time they reached the hangar R, the associate was already inside, preparing a jet for takeoff. Elias kicked the door open. The associate was a heavy-set man in a cheap suit, his hands shaking as he fumbled with the controls. He turned when he heard the noise, his face going pale. Don't move, Elias said. His voice harrowed. The associate froze. He raised his hands slowly. I don't know anything, he said. I'm just a pilot. I was hired to fly a plane. That's all. Elias walked closer. He looked at the man, his eyes cold. You're lying, he said. You want to Crane's people. You're trying to get him out of the country. The associate shook his head frantically. No, I swear. I don't work for Crane. I was hired by someone else. A woman. She paid me in cash. She said she needed to get out of the city fast. I don't know anything about Crane. Elias studied him for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph of Silas Crane. Do you recognize this man? He asked. The associate looked at the photograph. His face went even paler. That's him, he said. That's the man who hired me. But he didn't give me his name. He just said he needed a plane. He said he was in trouble. He said he needed to leave tonight. Elias's jaw tightened. Where is he now? I don't know, the associate said. He said he'd meet me here. He said he'd be here by midnight. But he hasn't shown up yet. Elias looked at his watch. It was 5 minutes of midnight. He's not coming, Elias said. He's already gone. Colm stepped four-way road. What do we do? Elias was silent for a moment. Then he turned to the associate. You're going to help us, he said. You're going to tell us everything you know about the woman who hired you. And then you're going to contact Crane and tell him the plane is ready. The associate's eyes widened. He'll kill me. Not if we get to him first, Elias said. Now do it. The associate hesitated. Then he nodded slowly and reached for his phone. Elias stepped back, his eyes fixed on the man. He knew that Crane was slipping away. He knew that every second counted. But he also knew that he was closer than he had ever been. The call was made. The associate spoke in a low, trembling voice, telling Crane that the plane was ready. Crane's voice crackled through the speaker, tinny and distant. I'm on my way, Crane said. Be ready to take off as soon as I arrive. The line went dead. Elias looked at Colm. But he's coming, he said. Get the team into position. We're going to end this. The team moved into position around the hangar. They took cover behind crates and vehicles, their weapons trained on the entrance. The minutes ticked by, slow and heavy. Then, in the distance, the sound of an engine. A CAR approached, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Elias watched as the CAR pulled into the hangar. The driver stepped out, a woman in a RK coat, her face hidden by a hood. She walked around to the passenger door and opened it. Silas Crane stepped out. He looked older than he had in the photographs. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken. He walked with a limp, leaning on a cane. He looked like a man who had been running for a long time and was finally out of places to run. Elias stepped out of the shadows. Crane, he said. Crane stopped. He looked up, his eyes meeting Elias's. Vance, he said. I should have known. You should have, Elias said. But you were too arrogant. You thought you could outrun the truth. You thought you could hide forever. Crane smiled. It was a thin, bitter smile. Outrun the truth, he said. I've been running from the truth for 40 years, and I've done a damn good job of it. But I suppose all good things must come to an end. He reached into his coat. Elias tensed, his hand moving to his weapon. But Crane did not pull a gun. He pulled out a folder, thick and worn. You want the truth, Crane said. Here it is. Every name, every transaction, every operation. It's all here. I've been keeping records for 40 years. I knew this day would come. I knew someone would eventually catch up to me. So I made sure I had leverage. Elias took the folder. He opened it, scanning the contents. It was everything he had ever wanted. Look at the last page, Crane said. I think you'll find it interesting. Elias flipped to the last page. His eyes moved over the words, his expression horror-deaning. Your mother, Crane said. Marga Rhett Vance. She was involved. She knew about the deal. She helped cover it up. She was the one who made sure the investigation was buried. Elias read at the page. He had suspected. He had hoped he was wrong. She sold her own son, Crane said. She sold you, Elias. She made a deal with me to ensure that the truth never came out. She protected Julian. She protected the family name. And she sacrificed you. The silence was absolute. Elias closed the folder. He looked at Crane, his eyes cold. Thank you, he said. Crane frowned. For what? For the truth, Elias said. Now I know who I'm fighting. He turned to Colm. Take him, he said. The team moved in, securing Crane and the woman. Elias walked out of the hangar, the folder tucked under his arm, the weight of the truth pressing down on him that he had won. But the victory felt hollow. He had exposed the conspiracy. He had brought down the network. He had avenged his men. But he had also lost everything else. His family, his name, his past. And now he had to decide what to do with the truth. The Wari house was silent, except for the hum of the Seoling servers. Elias sat alone at the table. The folder from Crane spread before him. The last page was still open. The name of R.J. Rhett Vance sta ring back at him in cold black ink he had known. Somewhere deep in the RT of his mind that he had walled off and refused to examine, he had always known. R.J. Rhett Vance did not make mistakes. She did not overlook inconvenient truths. She had buried the investigation into the Zagros disaster with surgical precision, and Elias had let himself believe it was grief that drove her. Grief for the son she had lost. Grief for the legacy that had died with him. It was a lie. It had always been a lie. Colm entered the room, his boots heavy on the concrete floor. He stopped a few feet from the table, his eyes scanning the spread of documents. "Boss," he said, "we need to talk." Elias did not look up. About what comes next?" Colm said. "Crane is in custody. Julian is in a black site facility. Thorne is singing like a bird. The broadcast has gone viral. The entire network is in chaos. We've done what we set out to do. The mission is over." Elias closed the folder. He looked at Colm, his face unreadable. "The mission is not over," he said. "There's still one name left on the list." Colm's jaw tightened. "You can't be serious. Your mother, she's already been exposed. The broadcast mentioned her involvement. She's going to be investigated. She's going to face consequences. You don't need to do anything else." Elias stood. He walked to the window, looking out at the gray dawn creeping over the city. "She's not going to face consequences," he said. "Not the kind she deserves. She'll hire the best lawyers. She'll spin the narrative. She'll claim she was coerced, manipulated, deceived. And in a few years, she'll be back in the circles of power, pulling strings, protecting the family name. She'll have Leah reneged nothing. She'll have changed nothing." Colm was silent for a long moment. "So what do you want to do?" he asked. Elias turned. His eyes were cold, but there was something else in them. Something that looked almost like pain. "I want to give her a choice," he said. "One last chance to do the right thing. And if she refuses," he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The Vance estate looked different in the daylight. The grandeur was still there, the old money and colder artis etched into every stone. But now it looked hollow, empty, a monument to a family that had already collapsed from the inside. Elias walked through the front door without knocking. The security team was gone. The staff had been dismissed. The house was empty, save for one person. R.J. Rhett Vance was in the drawing room, seated in the same velvet chaise where he had found her 2 nights ago. She was still wearing the severe black dress. Her hair was disheveled. Her eyes were red and swollen. She had been crying. She looked up when he entered. Her face crumpled, but she did not speak. Elias walked to the fireplace. He stood with his back to her, sta ring at the portrait of their father. "You knew," he said. "You knew about the deal. You knew about Crane. You knew that Julian sold out my men, and you helped cover it up." R.J. Rhett's voice was a whisper. "I did what I had to do to protect this family." "This family," Elias turned, his eyes blazing. "You destroyed this family. You let Julian become a monster. You let Crane profit from murder. And you let me rot in the ground for 6 years, believing I was dead, while you protected the people who tried to kill me." R.J. Rhett flinched. She looked away, her hands trembling in her lap. "You don't understand," she said. "I had no choice. Julian was my son. He was your brother. If I had exposed him, the entire family would have been destroyed. The Vance name would have been erased from history. Everything your father built, everything I sacrificed for, would have been for nothing." Elias walked to her. He knelt down, bringing his face level with hers. "You had a choice," he said. "You could have told the truth. You could have saved my men. You could have brought Julian to justice and let the family name burn. Instead, you chose to protect a lie. You chose to let 12 soldiers die in vain. You chose to let me see ARRY the weight of that guilt for 6 years, thinking I'd failed them. MARJ Rhett's eyes filled with TRS. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough, Elias said. It never has been, and it never will be. He stood. He walked back to the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back. That I have the evidence, he said. Everything. The transactions. The communications. The names. I have proof that you knew about the deal before it happened. I have proof that you helped cover it up after it was done. I have enough to destroy you, Mother. Completely. Irrevocably. MARGA Rhett's face went pale. What are you going to do? Elias turned. He looked at her, his eyes flat and cold. I'm going to give you a choice, he said. You can't confess. You can go on live television and admit everything. You can tell the world the truth about what you did. And then you can face the consequences. Prison. Disgrace. The loss of everything you've ever loved. MARJ Rhett STA read at him. Her lips root in shock. Or, Elias continued, you can refuse. You can try to fight it. You can hire lawyers and spin the narrative. And I will release the evidence to every news outlet, every investigative agency, every court in the country. I will destroy you publicly. I will make sure that your name becomes synonymous with betrayal. And I will watch as everything you've ever built crumbles to dust. MARGA Rhett shook her head. You wouldn't do that. I'm your mother. Elias's face did not change. You gave up the right to be my mother the moment you chose Julian over the truth. The moment you chose to let me rot in a grave that wasn't mine. The moment you decided that the Vance name was more important than justice. He walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. That you have 24 hours, he said. Make your choice. He walked out of the room. He did not look back. That the safe house was quiet when he returned. The team was gathered in the living room, watching the news. Elias walked past them without a word, heading to the small room at the back of the APA Mint where he had set up his command center. He sat down at the desk. He pulled out the folder from Crane and began to organize the documents. He had a lot of work to do. Colm Ape read in the doorway. She's going to take the deal, Colm said. I've been monitoring her communications. She's already contacting lawyers. She's trying to negotiate a plea. She's SCA read. Elias did not look up. She should be. What about the rest of it? Colm asked. The network is in shambles. But there are still loose ends. People who helped Crane. People who profited from the deal. Are going to go after them? Elias paused. He looked at the documents spread across the desk. Yes, he said. Every single one. This isn't over until every last person who was involved in the Zagros disaster has been brought to justice. I don't see how long it takes. I don't see how powerful they are. I'm going to find them all. Colm nodded slowly. He looked at Elias, his face unreadable, and after that he asked that Elias did not answer. He turned back to the documents, his hands moving methodically through the stacks of paper. There was no after. There was only the mission. There was only the truth. There was only the cold, unyielding justice that had been denied to 12 men for 6 years. He would not stop until it was done. The hours passed in silence. Elias worked through the night, organizing the evidence, building the case. He did not sleep. He did not eat. He did not allow himself to think about anything other than the task at hand. Up by the time dawn broke, he had a plan. He had names. He had locations. He had the vulnerabilities of every single person who had ever been involved in the conspiracy. He stood up. He walked to the window, looking out at the city. The sun was rising over the skyscrapers, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. He was ready. He turned to Colm, who was standing in the doorway. It's time, he said. Let's finish this. Colm nodded. He turned and walked back into the living room, where the team was waiting. Elias followed, the folder tucked under his arm, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. He had built a network of his own, a network of justice, a network of vengeance, and he was going to use it to burn the world down. The final hours ticked away like the last beats of a dying ERT. Elias stood in the center of the command room, surrounded by monitors and data streams. Every screen displayed a different thread of the conspiracy. Every name on his list had been cross-referenced, triangulated, and pinned down. The net was closing, and there was nowhere left to run. Colm entered, his face grim. The broadcast is set for noon. Every major network has confirmed. They're calling it the most anticipated public address in decades. The entire country is watching. Elias did not respond. He was staring at a single screen, the one that displayed the live feed from the Vance estate. Margaret Vance was seated in the drawing room, her hands folded in her lap, her face a mask of controlled terror. She had made her choice. She had agreed to confess that, but Elias knew his mother better than anyone. She had never done anything without a contingency plan that she's going to try to spin it, Elias said. She's going to confess, but she's going to frame herself as a victim. She's going to say she was coerced. She's going to claim she was protecting Julian from himself. She's going to make herself the martyr. Cole nodded. We anticipated that. We have the documents ready. The full chain of evidence. The unredacted communications. If she deviates from the truth, we release everything. Elias turned from the screen. No. Cole frowned. No. If she deviates, I handle it myself, Elias said. Live. In front of the cameras. I waited 6 years for this moment. I'm not going to let her steal it with a performance. The clock on the wall ticked past 11. 1 hour to go. The studio was the same Wari house where Elias had recorded his first broadcast. But this time, the setup was different. The cameras were positioned to capture every angle. The lighting was hot RSH and unforgiving. There would be no shadows to hide in. Elias stood in front of the main camera, his hands clasped behind his back. He was wearing a simple black suit, the same one he had worn to the gala. The memory stick was in his pocket, a thin sliver of metal that held the fate of an empire. Colm stood off to the side, his arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the monitors. We have confirmation that Margaret Vance is in position. She's ready to go live on a separate feed. The networks are going to split the screen. It's going to be a direct confrontation. Elias nodded. He had expected this. He had planned for this. The clock struck 12. The red light on the camera blinked on. Elias looked into the lens, his face calm, his eyes cold. Good afternoon, he said. My name is Elias Vance. 6 days ago, I stood before the world and exposed a conspiracy that had been hidden for 6 years. I told you the truth about the Zagros disaster. I gave you the names of the men who orchestrated it, and I promised you that I would not stop until justice was served. He paused. The silence stretched. That today, I am here to deliver on that promise. The screen split. Margaret Vance read on the right side of the frame, seated in the drawing room of the Vance estate. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She looked like a woman who had been broken. Mother, Elias said. You have something to say. Margaret's voice was a whisper. I'm here to confess. I'm here to admit that I knew about the Zagros deal. I knew about Julian's involvement. I knew about Silas Crane, and I helped cover it up. Her voice cracked. She looked down at her hands. I am guilty, she said. I've been guilty for 6 years. I chose to protect my family over the truth. I chose to let 12 good men die in vain. I have no excuse. I have no defense. I am sorry. Elias watched her. He saw the tremor in her hands. He saw the tears streaming down her face. But he also saw the calculation in her eyes, the faint flicker of a performance. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the memory stick. You're sorry, he said. But you're not telling the whole truth. Margaret's eyes widened. What do you mean? Elias held up the memory stick. I have communications that show you were not just a passive participant. You were an active collaborator. You helped Julian negotiate the deal. You helped Crane secure the funding. You helped suppress the investigation. You didn't just cover it up, Mother. You helped plan it. Margaret's face went white. That's not true. It is true, Elias said. And I have the evidence to prove it. He turned to the camera. I'm going to release this evidence now. Every document, every communication, every transaction. The world is going to see exactly what Margaret Vance did. And then the world is going to decide what happens next. He inserted the memory stick into a laptop connected to the broadcast feed. The documents began to upload. Scrolling across the screen, Margaret's face crumpled. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Elias looked at her. He looked at the woman who had given him life, who had raised him, who had abandoned him in the name of legacy. This is the end, he said. Not just for you, for everyone, for Julian, for Crane, for everyone who profited from the deaths of my men. They are all going to face justice, and there is nothing anyone can do to stop it. He turned back to the camera. I have given you the truth, he said. Now you have to decide what to do with it. He stepped away from the camera. The feed continued, streaming the documents to the world. Colm approached, his face unreadable. It's done. Elias nodded. He walked to the window, looking out at the city below. The sun was high, casting long shadows across the streets. It's not done, he said. It will never be done. There will always be more names, more conspiracies, more corruption. But this party is finished. He turned. He looked at Colm, his eyes cold. Get the team ready, he said. We're not done yet. Colm frowned. What do you mean? Elias walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. Julian had associates, he said. Crane had partners. Thorne had clients. The network goes deeper than we thought. There are more names on the list. More people who need to be brought to justice. He looked back at Colm. I told you I would not stop until every last person who was involved in the Zagreus disaster has been held accountable. I meant it. He walked out of the room, the memory stick still in his hand, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. He had exposed the conspiracy. He had brought down the network. He had avenged his men, but the work was far from over. There were more shadows to hunt, more ghosts to lay to rest. He stepped out into the sunlight, his footsteps echoing on the pavement. And he kept walking. The broadcast ended. The screens went to RK. The documents continued to stream across the internet, uploaded to every server Elias had access to, spreading like wildfire through the digital veins of the world. Elias stood alone in the Wari house. The team had filed out, following Colm's orders, prep a ring for the next phase. The room was empty except for the hum of Siwu Ling's servers and the faint echo of his own breathing. He walked to the table where the laptop sat. He read the screen, watching the numbers climb. Millions of views. Hundreds of thousands of Shah-Res. The comments were flooding in, a tidal wave of outrage and grief and vindication that he had done it. He had exposed the conspiracy. He had brought down the network. He had avenged his men. But he felt nothing. He had spent 6 years building this moment. 6 years of silence and sacrifice. 6 years of watching from the shadows while the people who had destroyed his life walked free. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times. The triumph, the relief, the closure. There was none of that. There was only the cold, empty space where his purpose had been. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a photograph, worn and folded, the edges soft from years of handling. It showed 12 men, their faces young and hopeful, standing in front of a helicopter in the desert sun. His men, his brothers. They had died because of a deal. They had died because of greed. They had died because a group of powerful people had decided their lives were worth less than a profit margin. And now, finally, the world knew the truth. Elias looked at the photograph for a long moment. Then he folded it and placed it back in his pocket. He walked to the window. The city sprawled before him, a jungle of glass and steel, teeming with people who had no idea what had just happened. People who would go on with their lives, oblivious to the war that had been waged in their name. He had won, but the victory felt hollow. Colm Ape read in the doorway. The team is ready. We have a next set of names. The next targets. We can move whenever you're ready. Elias did not turn. He read out at the city, his reflection ghosting against the glass. To wait, he said. Colm hesitated. Boss. Elias was silent for a long moment. Then he turned. His eyes were cold, but there was something else in them. Something that looked almost like exhaustion. I need a minute, he said. Just a minute. Colm nodded. He stepped back, closing the door behind him. Elias stood alone in the room. He looked at the photograph in his pocket. He looked at the city. He looked at the empty space where his future had once been. The mission was over. But the war was not. He had more names, more targets, more shadows to hunt. And he would not stop until every single one of them had faced the truth. He walked out of the room, his footsteps echoing in the silence, the weight of the future pressing down on him.